Hey, besties, welcome to my college football channel where we obviously talk about college football. That's why it's called a college football channel. And we are continuing our fun little team chat series with none other than America's darling, the true America's team, the Indiana Hoosiers. As I've been going through teams 24 record and sort of looking ahead, very rarely do I read stuff and I'm just like kind of shocked. But it is remarkable to see put into numbers just how good Indiana football was last year. And like we saw it, we watched them have a very good season. Obviously, I think people tuned in specifically for those Ohio State Notre Dame games and maybe not any of the other ones. So you missed a little bit of the Indiana flair and party and fun of what that football team had become last year. But the numbers do not lie, and Indiana football was so insanely good that after researching them, I just kind of walked around for a bit and just had to soak it all in and be like, God, it is insane how good of a football team they were last year. So, for a little bit of background, a little bit of reference, Indiana football is considered one of the worst Power Five college football programs of all time. They hired Curt Cignetti out of James Madison, and he brought in a ton of his staff, a lot of former players, and a ton of players from the portal. And they weren't big portal gets. They were group of five players that Curt Cignetti felt aligned with what he was doing. And then he showed up and he kicked everyone's ass. He kicked everyone's ass. He took one of the historically worst teams in college football and kicked everyone's ass. They finished 11 and 2. They made it to the playoff. Indiana football was in the playoff with two losses to Ohio State and Notre Dame, the two teams that played in the national championship game. It cannot be understated how good Indiana football was last year. And what I want to talk about today is kind of the conversation that people have been having about Indiana football, which let me just say, isn't it crazy that people are having conversations about Indiana football? Which is, was last year a fluke? Was it an anomaly? Or was Curt Cignetti's coaching turnaround of Indiana just the greatest thing we've ever seen that has actually become sustainable? That is not just Indiana's golden year, but now who Indiana is. I'm leaning towards yes, that Curt Cignetti has just changed the world and it wasn't just like some silly little coinky dink that Indiana football was that good last year because the stats are insane. They averaged 41 points a game with over 425 yards per game. They were second nationally in total offense. And then defensively, they were only allowing 15 points a game, which is second nationally. They gave up 30 points just one time the whole season, and they just kicked everyone's ass. I think that the conversation about Indiana football last season was, oh, bad schedule. They aren't playing tough teams. They're not doing it. Yeah, they weren't playing tough teams, but they were beating them by 45 every time, you know? Isn't that what good teams are supposed to do? Mm-hmm. It's just remarkable. And so if you look at what Indiana is bringing back next season, obviously you've lost Curtis Rourke, but now you have a season under your belt where as Curt Cignetti, you have proven that we are a legit program. I'm a legit coach. If you come here, especially if you are good at what you do, we will put you in a position to thrive, which is how Indiana landed one of the best quarterbacks in this transfer portal class in Fernando Mendoza from Cal. But the strategy that really took Signetti and Indiana from, hey, 6 wins would be a great season, especially for a first year or two, they're in the playoff, was how they use the portal. Mike Norvell, pay attention, take notes. There were no insane, huge big name gets from Indiana through this portal cycle. They were very intentional about they took a lot of group of five guys. They took a lot of guys from James Madison. So the way they used the portal was just with such intentionality that you found this chemistry and made everything work. And they're starting to do that again. Even if you look at the additions in the portal this year, obviously you have a little more pizzazz with Fernando Mendoza from Cal. You got an offensive lineman from Notre Dame. You're getting more of those big name guys, but you're still sort of relying on that portal identity and mindset, which is I'm going to take a proven guy in the portal rather than someone with potential, which is Florida State is going to be the other side of this example, which they were like, oh, they had a lot of offers and they played for a good team. They just didn't get a lot of minutes. They're coming to Florida State, where Indiana was very much like, hey, I don't care that you went to UAB. I like your tape there. They brought in two great running backs in the portal from Maryland and UAB. They've brought in a receiver from App State. They're still sort of taking that group of five mentality with them, which I think is just cool. I think it's just awesome. And they're not losing that much. I mean, obviously, you've lost Curtis Rourke, you lost your running back. I think more important than any of that is despite the season that Indiana had, both coordinators are staying. And they're bringing a lot back on the defensive side. They've got their best player, linebacker, and All-American Aiden Fisher returning. Like they are stacked up to have another really, really good season. Because you have now the proven talent of being like a good ass Indiana football player, which is once again a crazy thing to say, and just such an intentional supplementing of what you need. The way that Curt has used the portal, I think, should be studied because it's just like chef's kiss. On the concern side with that, you guys know that I'm not a portal truthist. I am a please find a good mix of the two. So Indiana does have the sixth best portal class in the Big Ten, but recruiting is 14th out of 18th for the 2025 class in the Big Ten. That's not ideal, but I tried to give Curt a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. We're like, hey man, it's just year two. It's just year two. It's hard to get your guys right away. It's hard to recruit right away. And so, as long as I can see Indiana and Signetti intertwine a little bit more of that recruiting over the next few years and not be so portal reliant. And I think if I start to see Signetti and Indiana football maybe wean off the transfer portal a little bit and go a little bit more into recruiting and have those kind of homegrown guys as well as supplementing what you need from the portal, I think they're going to be an insanely good football team for many years to come. This year is a very big deal for Indiana. It's going to sort of prove was what happened with Signetti just a freak happy accident, and last season was just like the crazy 11-2 year that home field will sell t-shirts about for the rest of time, or was it the start of a real dynasty? And you're going to get the chance to see that because although I don't think Indiana has the toughest schedule in the world this year, they have certainly upgraded from what they were playing last year. They host Illinois. They're on the road at Penn State, at Oregon, at Iowa, which that could be a big deal if it's at night. If it's at the daytime, don't worry about it. That's a much more difficult schedule than they faced last year, where really Ohio State was the only team they played. And just a reminder again, Ohio State won the national championship, so like, please let's not look too much into that game. So when I think about how Indiana's going to look next season, I think they're going to be a very good football team. I think their defense is actually probably going to be better than they were last year. I think they filled in really nicely what they were looking for in those pieces. And I think their offense, I'm curious how Fernando Mendoza necessarily fits in that because obviously bringing in a new quarterback, bringing in a couple transfers, there's obviously, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's going to take a little time to figure that out. But Indiana's schedule starts off pretty easy. And so by the time they face their conference opener, which is Illinois, that's a very tough team to play, I think we'll have a good idea of what Fernando Mendoza's ceiling is as a Hoosier. But because of the nature of the schedule, because they're on the road at Oregon, because they're on the road at Penn State, I think that Indiana's win total will drop to 10 wins, perhaps, which is embarrassing, but whatever. It's going to be a very fun team to watch. And if you're an Indiana fan, eh, turn this video off, quit watching, like, subscribe, leave, and then don't watch the rest. It's going to be interesting to see how Curt Cignetti ends up leaving Indiana and who he leaves them for. Because if this run is sustainable, if this happens again, I'm going to tell you right now, that guy was meant for LSU. Like Curt Cignetti was meant to be the head coach for Louisiana State. I just got a feeling. I don't know. And we all think the Brian Kelly thing isn't going to work out, but that's a video for another day. But let me know how you guys think Indiana's going to do in the comments. And of course, if you liked this video, if you like this team preview series, like, subscribe, comment. And another thing that you could do is tell me what team you want to talk about next. Because I've got a few in the holster. I've got a couple. I just was like really excited to talk about Indiana today, which is crazy because I've been excited to talk about Indiana for a long time. Once again, I'm just saying things that have never been said before.